You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts Uncle Mike Tusaw from St. Charles Wealth Management, Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian from OptionPit.com, Andrew the Rock Lobster Joe Benazzi from OptionPit.com, and Henry the Flowmaster Schwartz from SIBO. The Option Block is brought to you by SIBO. SIBO's suite of S&P 500 index options, SPX and mini S&P 500 XSP options, allows traders to speculate on the direction of the market, generate income, and hedge for downside protection of their portfolio of stocks. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.sibo.com/SPX today to learn more. The views expressed herein are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of CBOE Global Markets Incorporated or any of its subsidiaries, collectively CBOE. The information provided is for general education and information purposes only. There are important risks associated with transacting in any of the CBOE products or any of the digital assets discussed here. Before engaging in any transactions in those products or digital assets, it is important for market participants to carefully review the disclosures and disclaimers contained at www.cboe.com/US_disclaimers. These products and digital assets are complex and are suitable only for sophisticated market participants. These products involve the risk of loss, which can be substantial and, depending on the type of product, can exceed the amount of money deposited in establishing the position. Market participants should put at risk only funds they can afford to lose without affecting their lifestyle. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, welcome back to the Option Block. You might hear a little bit of different ambient noise out here today because we are recording a little bit different location, not in our studio in Chi-Town, but across the town here at the Securities Traders Association 100th anniversary event, a great event. I had a great opportunity to be on a panel this morning with some great folks, and hopefully we'll be able to get that audio out. It will go out to the pro members when we get to cut it together for the main network. We'll see, but a lot of great stuff out there. We had some fun slides we tweeted out as well. But the reason we sound a little different, listeners, is because we're coming at you from the conference because the Flowmaster is here in person, live to tape here at the conference this week. Mr. Flowmaster, welcome to balmy Chicago, sir.
It's great to see you, Mark. It's great to be here. And, you know, I think I'm going to get out of town right before you plunge into the polar vortex of single digits and negative wind chill.
This conference always overlaps with the worst week of the year for weather. It's the one cliche week where Chicago lives up to its reputation. I always feel bad whenever I have to do a session. People have to fly in from warmer climates for this 1 week out of the year in Chicago. I always apologize. This year, you're going to get out just ahead of time. Of course, New York is not exactly a tropical wonderland right now either, sir.
Well, compared to Chicago, it might feel that way this weekend.
Well, I know I didn't get a chance to catch your session yesterday, but I know you had a lot of fun stuff going on. You always come armed with some data, hence your nickname, sir, the Flowmaster. So walk our folks through who weren't able to come here, which I'm assuming is a lot, We weren't able to see your session yesterday. What were some of the highlights? What did you talk about?
Sure. I mean, I've been doing STAC, even though I'm based in New York. I really like the Chicago conference, and options floor trading at least was born here, right? SIBO started things off in 1973. And I know that you talked about like the full comprehensive history of trading on your panel, but the name of my panel was Listed Options, New Horizons, Tech Challenges and Regulation, which was a little bit different from my kind of state of the industry standard, although I guess I probably used some of the same concepts. And I was lucky enough to have a gentleman from OCC, from the Options Clearing Corp, Mike Hansen, Ben Lonergan from Simplex Trading, which is an institutional firm, but also he's got a lot of liquidity background, and then Nick Winant from Robinhood, and Nick has been at Robinhood for 8 years, which means it takes kind of back to the beginning of things. And so I just kind of set the stage with some slides and some concepts. We talked about volume over the years, right? We dove into the fact that last year we were up 26% market wide.
Did you tell them you tried to snipe the 15 billionth contract and you just missed it?
I missed it, but I was at least able to spot it, or what I believe is that 15 billionth contract. And just kind of going through the fact that we're seeing growth just across the board, right? Whether you're talking single stock options, which are, they really are kind of heavily retail, or ETF options, which is kind of a mix of retail, institutional, hedgers, positioning, speculation, and everything. And the fact that gold and silver last year, been on such an incredible run, that those actually showed up in the top 10 in terms of the ETF world. And then index options, which the dominant products are SPX and VIX. And in SPX, the dominant kind of activity is the zero-DT trading, so we were talking about that as well. And just kind of, I had a chance to ask, especially, Nick from Robinhood, like how his client base, right? I believe he did cite some stats. They definitely skew younger than the kind of your traditional brokerage, kind of old school retail broker. They're younger. He talked about how they really are kind of self-educated, but very actively communicating and learning strategies. And it kind of struck me that we would go to conferences. I've been in the business forever, not even longer than you, and a weak point was always education, right? The bulge bracket brokers were always afraid to kind of get their clients comfortable trading options. I think because those brokers weren't really comfortable with the product to begin with. They didn't quite understand it, so they're not really, they'd rather have their customers just trading stock. And Robinhood really does get the credit for kind of upending things and just saying we don't care. We're gonna make we're gonna reduce the friction in terms of costs, but also not be shy about helping their clients, I guess, get comfortable trading options. So we talked about that for a while, and really, and from the OCC and from Ben's perspective, just kind of what does this mean for people that are because the options industry, we're trading 61 million contracts a day. Year to date, I think we're actually averaging closer to 66, 67. So it's already a good year. I believe if you extrapolate that, you get about 17 billion contracts. So
that's insane.
I asked for some predictions. I didn't quite get hard numbers out of people. I'm trying to kind of firm mine up, but I would say we could see 16.5 to 17 billion contracts easy this year, especially because there's a couple of recent developments. One is that we're going to have Monday and Wednesday expirations.
Yeah, that surprised me. I mean, we were just talking about that last week, and then to hear coming out of the panel yesterday that is pretty much a done deal starting soon, correct?
Yeah, I think on Monday they are listing, and SIBO exchanges as well, because these are multi-list products. There will be Monday and Wednesday expirations, not for Monday. I believe we're starting out a week or two. So I think there'll be a February 4th, which I believe is a Monday expiration for the big names. We're talking about Tesla, Nvidia, Apple. I believe Google might be being skipped for that first
earnings week, right? They skipped those, right?
Yeah, they explicitly, the filing explicitly does not list dailies on earnings date. So, which I think is probably a good step. However, if earnings are rescheduled for a day where they've already listed those daily contracts, they'll be there. And the truth is, In fact, I was talking to somebody from Fidelity yesterday about this and just kind of how he felt his clients would handle some of these after-hour moves. And he said, even though they don't have it on earnings day, there's earnings from suppliers and partners, and so it's in a way these stocks are really going to move after hours anyway. Maybe not as extreme as earnings, but
and of course we have it on Friday now anyway, right? There's an earnings on Friday. We have that. That 0-day effect essentially.
Yeah, but you don't get a lot of earnings on Fridays. No. You don't get too many kind of after hours catalysts. It happens for sure, and I think that's kind of the view of the industry. This is not a surprise that these products are finally coming to market, and I think one of the reasons it kind of slow rolled a little bit was to help the brokers at least get positioned, to help their clients, to provide. You need to educate your customers as to even though the stock closed at $50 and you were short a 49 put, you're not out of the woods because the stock sells off after hours, and it gets a little bit hairier when if you have a customer who's in a vertical spread and the move is in the middle, because the customer needs to know not only are you going to get assigned on one side, but you may want to actually contrary exercise your long, and that I think is and in fact the gentleman I was talking to from the broker said we're just going to have to kind of close out clients proactively. So it'll be interesting to see because typically there's some guideline, like we're not going to let you have positions on that are within 5% of spot in a physically settled product. Well, is 5% enough if you're going into some sort of catalyst?
5%'s a big, yeah.
And so what's the right number? Is it 25%? That seems kind of aggressive to close people out. And then, so I think there'll be probably some growing pains in terms of figuring out. But we've seen, one of the charts that I showed was the zero-day activity, which now makes up the majority of the flow in SPX and SPY and NDX and Qs. And there is definitely a use case. There's definitely an audience that's really receptive to these products. And I'm sure we will see activity. Just simply based on the kind of implicit leverage that is in these contracts. When you're talking about something with a few hours to go, there's a place for that, and I think it's up to the industry to make sure people are responsible about it, and understand, leverage, even if it's just implicit option leverage, is cuts both ways. It can be great and in your favor, and it can be a disaster if you're not really equipped to understand how things can move.
So you mentioned the contra exercise. That'll probably be an educational lift. People probably haven't thought about that in a while. It's going to start becoming more of an issue with these newer weekly products. You mentioned the brokers sometimes proactively coming in to close you out. So
what's funny is it makes me think back to when I had Trade Alert as my product. We're all about alerting, right? So really, what you need is contrary exercise alerts.
Yeah, you do.
But the after hours moves they're hard to see sometimes, right? And if a stock trades down $4, but it's on a little bit of volume, is that the same as it trading down $4 on significant volume? And so there's a lot of edge cases where I think that's the biggest challenge is there are situations where it's not super clear if you're going to contrary, how many you're going to get assigned on, because the stock might still be whipping around even until that exercise deadline. So, but you know what, this industry has evolved and dealt with, if both your panel and my panel, we looked at how far we've come, and it's unbelievable. When we started in the business, and a million contracts was a busy day. And now, we had 2 days over 100 million last year. We have a million contracts trade in 10 minutes when we get a quick move. So I'm pretty confident that the industry will figure it out, and I hope that kind of the end users, I guess it's like anything else. They have to do their homework and know what they're doing, or they really will get hurt.
Any other interesting or scintillating takeaways from your session, sir?
No, I think that we did touch a little bit on event contracts and how that kind of holds.
Inescapable. I'm surprised we didn't have a chance to get to it today, but there was enough to talk about the history before we looked forward. But it's inescapable these days. It's
a really interesting kind of confluence of everything, and and it was interesting. One thing that Nick said, about how Robinhood really just kind of addressed a need that was out there, right? That user base was interested in trading, and they made it easier to do so. And Robinhood has also been one of the early brokers to let their clients access event contracts, not just economic, but also sports. And so, and he, it's the same thing. He said, this is what people want to trade or to put some money into. And it reminded me of basically, the kind of the bulge bracket brokers. I think they missed the boat a little bit in terms of teaching people to trade options and really providing resources for that. I know even in my role at CBOE, there's kind of a stigma about sports betting. Like CBOE has announced we're working on event contracts, but we're going to stay away from sports because we believe kind of sports and financial products, there's a difference there. But it was interesting to hear from Robinhood that they don't really see that as a difference. They see those as complementary products for their
people
clients.
People in the space tend to view it as a line of demarcation. People outside the space tend to see there's no line. What line? What line are you talking about? It's all financial intent at the end of the day. Speaking of financial intent, Mr. Flowmaster, before we get out of here, let's do a real quick live from the conference odd block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
Because you had some updates on your beloved ARDX you wanted to share.
I do, I have to say. So last week I believe we hit on two, ARDX and CWEN,
yes,
Clearway Energy. I told you at the time, I got long a little bit of stock in both. ARDX is up over $1 from that Thursday. So it's only a $7 stock, so now it's at $8.
That's a pretty good move, yeah.
So I've made a little bit of money. I'm kind of scaling out of that position. And Clearway also is up. It's up 60 cents today. It's about $1 above where I bought it. That's a $36 stock. So it's obviously been a heck of a week, right? We had we had 100 handles down on Greenland, and then we had 100 handles up on Greenland in 2 days. So it's been, volatility's been all over the place, and in the end, we're a little higher than we were going into this this week. And I have to say, I still don't know if there's any catalyst on ARDX. I believe is a drug stock. I don't think they've had any hard news in terms of trials or anything else, but the option flow certainly kind of worked out in this case, and I think it was even up on Tuesday, on the day that the market was really smacked. So, paying attention to option activity, picking your spots, managing your positions, keeping your bet sizes small. It's what I love to do and love to talk about, and they don't always all work, but there's a case where two of them, are looking pretty great.
Yeah, well, speaking of looking at things, it was great to look at you in person, sir, as opposed to beaming in remotely. I know you have to head out before the polar vortex hits Chi-Town.
I do.
We'll look forward to beaming you in next week. In the meantime, sir, folks want to check out all these goodies in CBOE land, including some Mag 10, which you said were kind of lighting up the tape out there today. Where should they go? What should they do?
Just head over to CBOE.com, and you can look for the Mag 10, which is our Magnificent 10 index. That's actually, I mentioned to you earlier, we're seeing really heavy put volume in there. It looks to me, and a lot of it's small trades, and they seem to be legging into some vertical spreads that expire next Monday or Tuesday. And I'm still trying to figure out if there's some mispricing or if it's really just an attractive risk-reward setup, or if possibly somebody's just kind of recommended a trade, because we don't have any Mag 10 earnings until the middle of the week, and these expire Monday and Tuesday. But we're going to see it looks like we'll see about 10 or 11,000 puts trade in Mag 10 today, and the previous record was 3,600 contracts total. So that's pretty impressive. CBOE.com, you can look for Mag 10. CBOE.com/RMA is where we have our risk and market analytics, and you can see our data sets and our platforms. You can request a trial, and you can also, if you can find it, sign up for the State of the Industry deck, which I produce, and we just put out the 2025 complete year, so that's available now. and I invite people to take a look.
I recommend the Flowmaster stats. We don't call them the Flowmaster for nothing. Have a good trip back, sir, and I will talk to you next week.
Thanks, Mark.
The Option Block is brought to you by CBOE. CBOE's suite of S&P 500 index options, SPX and mini S&P 500 XSP options, allows traders to speculate on the direction of the market, generate income, and hedge for downside protection of their portfolio of stocks. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.cboe.com/SPX today to learn more. The views expressed herein are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of CBOE Global Markets Incorporated or any of its subsidiaries, collectively CBOE. The information provided is for general education and information purposes only. There are important risks associated with transacting in any of the CBOE products or any of the digital assets discussed here. Before engaging in any transactions in those products or digital assets, it is important for market participants to carefully review the disclosures and disclaimers contained at www.cboe.com/US_disclaimers. These products and digital assets are complex and are suitable only for sophisticated market participants. These products involve the risk of loss, which can be substantial and, depending on the type of product, can exceed the amount of money deposited in establishing the position. Market participants should put at risk only funds they can afford to lose without affecting their lifestyle. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.